Hey, what's up everyone? So in today's video, I'm going to give a quick review of the Samsung Galaxy A71 and my experiences of using it for almost 4 months now. Now, this review is not going to be about the technical specs or any speed comparisons or anything like that, but rather what this phone feels like on a day-to-day basis when you use it for about 4 months or so. So, first of all, I'd like to say that the phone's screen is absolutely amazing, and for this price point, which is a mid to upper range smartphone, I don't think you're going to get a better screen than this. So getting an AMOLED, full 1080p, I think the screen resolution is 2400 by 1080 screen on this is really not going to get that anywhere else. And though it's a 60 hertz display, it doesn't really matter because the 120 hertz on a lot of the screens nowadays is going to drain your battery life anyways. So in terms of screen brightness, clarity, everything like that, you just can't get better than this phone. Now, real quick, the phone does come with a few things. So it comes with this super fast charger. It comes with some headphones, not the nice AKG ones, but decent ones. And it comes with a charging cable. So the version I got is the international version, which means it has dual SIM. If you watch any of my other videos, I did a comparison of this and the S20 Plus, and both of those are dual SIM versions because dual SIM is very important to me. So the good thing about fast charging, and this is super fast charging, which means it's 25 watts, is you're able to charge this phone, which has a pretty big 4500 milliamp battery, from 0 to 100 in just about 1 hour. Now, I never actually had to use this super fast charger. It's USB-C to USB-C, but I have USB-C charging ports all around my house, and I just find myself topping it up only if it's convenient, but I never had to. So that brings me to the next point. The battery life on this phone is absolutely amazing. Now, 4500 milliamp hours for a fairly large screen, I think this is 6.7 inches or something, it doesn't seem like much. It seems like, if it was a 5000 milliamp battery or 5500 milliamp battery, it would be even better. But no, 4500 milliamp hours on this Snapdragon 730 that basically sips power, and this 60 hertz screen that also just sips power lasts you a good 2 days. Now, using this phone for the past 4 months, I've noticed that this is one of the best battery life phones I've ever used, in the likes of iPhone Pro Max. Even I remember when the iPhone 8 Plus came out, a lot of the Samsung Galaxy Notes, this beats all of them. So this battery life, I think it's because it doesn't have a flagship chip in it. It's just amazing. So the next thing I want to talk about is the build. Now, a lot of people are slamming on this phone because it's not glass. Well, honestly, you can't tell that it's not glass. The back is glastic, which means it's actually plastic, but it has a nice, glow rainbow effect to it if you have it in the light, and it has a nice checkered pattern. So the build quality of this phone, I would say, is actually one of my favorites. The main reason why I picked up this phone is because of how thin it is. Like, just look at that. It says it's 7.8 millimeters or something like that, but this feels thinner than the S20 Plus. It definitely feels thinner than the S20 Ultra, and it feels thinner than any of the new iPhone 11 Pros. So coming from the iPhone 11 Pro, that was one of the biggest differences, is just how thin and how light this phone feels in the hand. And because it's not that expensive of a phone, and I've said this in my other review as well, you aren't afraid of using it without a case. It does come with a small protective case, and the case on it that it comes with is actually really nice. It's nice and thin, and it's free. But something about this phone, you don't have to use it with a case. And when you don't use it with a case, it feels absolutely amazing. Now, I'm not going to go too much into, the ports and all the sides of the phones. There's so many other videos on YouTube that you can watch for that, but I am going to talk about the headphone jack. So it does come with a headphone jack. And even though nowadays, a lot of us don't use wired headphones, I would use it once in a while, but only if it was just a convenient thing for me to just grab and plug in. Most of the time I would use my Galaxy Buds or AirPods. But you know what? Having a headphone jack, even on one of these mid-tier phones, is actually really great. It has one downward firing speaker, and it doesn't have the surround sound dual speaker system. So that's kind of one of the cons of this phone, is when you're watching any type of content, you're only getting the audio out of one side. And if you kind of have your finger on that area, you block out the audio. So that's, it's something that you have to get used to. And if you play audio really loud, the speaker tends to crackle a little bit. So like I said, the battery life is amazing on this phone. And even though it is just a 60 hertz screen, it's hard to notice the 120 hertz if you don't have it, right? You don't miss what you don't have. So 60 hertz is fine. The screen is absolutely beautiful and the battery life is amazing. The next thing I want to talk about is NFC. So this phone does have NFC, and NFC is very important for me because I wear the Galaxy Watch Active 2, and I'm able to make payments using the watch, and I'm also able to make payments using the phone. And I really like how Google Pay works. So I know the A51 in a lot of areas doesn't have NFC, but this does. The A71 does have NFC. So with Google Pay, once you set up all your cards and you link everything, it's better, I would say, than even Apple Pay, because on Apple Pay, you have to swipe up, you have to face unlock, and then you have to tap it. But with this, as long as it's on any screen, so as long as it's unlocked, you can be in a chat program or browsing the internet, and they ask you to pay, you just tap it. And right when you tap it, a payment prompt will come up on here and it'll say payment complete. So it's the easiest way that I've ever used for any contactless payment method is Google Pay, and this has that. So the next thing I want to talk about is price. Now, price is really important because nowadays, with 2020 and COVID and everyone's in lockdown and everyone's, we're in a recession, nobody has that much money anymore. So we're all looking on ways to save. And now they're coming out with these flagship phones. I know the Note 20 Ultra just came out, and all these other flagships that are 1,000 plus US dollars. And here in Canada, it's about 1,700 or 1,800 Canadian dollars. This phone is 500 bucks Canadian. I think it's $300 US, maybe 300 pounds. And for $500, we'll just call it 1/3 of the Ultra phones and 1/2 of the flagship phones. So you can get 2 of these for one S20, and you can get 3 of these for one S20 Ultra or Note 20 Ultra. Now that does mean something, because how fast, honestly, do you need your phone to be? You don't need it to be so fast in the sense that you need to run, 4 or 5 apps in the background all at the same time, and you're switching between all the time. Let's be honest, most of us use our phones for YouTube and maybe some chat apps, and maybe the occasional photo, and maybe internet browsing. That's about it. So between those things, this phone doesn't lag at all. The only time it would lag is if you open YouTube and you go back to the home screen and the YouTube goes down into the picture-in-picture mode. That process kind of makes it lag just a little bit, but it doesn't make it lag that much. It's noticeable. And the other thing that makes it lag just a little bit is if you open the camera and you try to snap some photos. So when you do that, it's a little bit slow, but not slow to the point where it doesn't work or something. So overall, I would say even, on the camera mode, it's fine, it's acceptable, and it's definitely usable. The little cutout on the top is really small. Now, we all know the back has a whole bunch of other cameras. You can watch other videos about those, but it doesn't really matter how many cameras you have. Most of the time you're using the main camera, the main 48 megapixel camera. It has a macro camera. It's fun to show off once, and that's it. You're only gonna open it once. And all the other ones, the wide angle, it's nice to have sometimes. Telephoto, that's all right. But the main, the front camera is one that you're going to use a lot. You're going to use it for a lot of video chatting, selfies, and you're going to use it for the face unlock. So this does have the face unlock, and it has the fingerprint unlock in screen. So it's an optical reader, which is not as good, I would say, as the ultrasonic ones in the S20, but it does work. Now, I've said this in my other video as well, it works some of the times. And I find myself, if I do a lot of work and my fingers get really chapped, then it doesn't work that well, because obviously it goes off of an image of your fingerprint. But if your hands are kind of nice and moisturized, and I was I was sure to moisturize my hands before doing this video because it didn't really work in the last video, then it works quite often. And I would say on a normal daily basis, it works at least 50% of the time, if not more. So it's not horrible. The speed is pretty quick and it gets the job done. Now, the other thing is the face unlock. So when you raise it to your face, it will unlock to the home screen, and you can have an option where you can swipe up to go to the home screen, or it will always just unlock straight to the home screen. That's the option I have, and it uses the front camera, but it doesn't use any 3D technology. It uses an image of your face. So if you have a photo of your face and you do that, it'll unlock as well. So it's not as secure, but it's good enough for most of us, I would say. You can also set some trusted devices and trusted areas in this phone, and I think that's just a feature of Android and the Samsung UI on here, where you can keep the phone unlocked if it's within the proximity of your watch, or whether it's in the proximity of your home. So basically, it can keep it unlocked based on GPS or based on a Bluetooth device nearby. So that's what I have it as, and most of the time when I'm home, especially now during lockdown, it'll stay unlocked all the time. So both of those unlock features, and then obviously you have PIN and stuff, work pretty well. You can have both of them set up at the same time. For all payment methods, it's not like iPhone where you can pay using your face unlock, because that's, I guess, secure enough to do so. But for this one, you have to pay using your fingerprint. And you can set up 3 fingerprints in this. And as long as you set up all 3, so I have my left thumb, my right thumb, and then my index finger. So as long as you set up at least 3 fingers, you'll be okay. One of them will have to work. If you're doing work around the house, work using your right hand, well, go with your left hand and then do the fingerprint unlock. So I don't have a huge issue with those. It's not perfect, not like the iPhone, but it's not a huge issue. Now, if you own this A71, and I'd be very curious as to how many of you actually currently own this phone, or maybe you own the A51. If you do, let me know in the comment section below, because I'm very curious as to whether or not you think this phone is slow for everyday use. I don't. I think this phone is really zippy, but there are 2 things that I did to make this phone feel a little bit faster. And I think it made it feel substantially faster. So as you can see now, I turned these off just for the sake of this video, but it has the animations, right? So the first thing I did was I turned off all animations. So you go into your settings, and then on the search bar up here, you just search remove animations. And you actually have to type it in. Now, this is another thing. Any setting that you search on this settings bar is really slow to populate. I don't know why they didn't index it, or whatever the reason might be, but it's just really slow to populate. So you go to remove animations, which is under accessibilities, and you see I highlighted it, and then you just push that little toggle, and then it removes animations. Now everything feels a lot faster. So you press something and it just pops up. Now the animation is nice if you have a really fast processor, so it doesn't lag at all. But sometimes if you're switching between a lot of apps, and this is another feature I use a lot, is if you double tap on the multitasking, it goes back to the last app that you used. So if you do that with animations, it lags a little bit. Without animations, it's actually really nice. And the next feature that makes it feel faster, now I don't know if it actually makes it faster, probably not, but it makes it feel faster, is if you go to sounds and vibrations, and you go down into system sound, touch interactions. So you turn that on. Now every time you touch something, it makes a ticking sound. And that ticking sound makes the phone feel a lot faster. I don't know if you can pick it up, but it makes just this tick, tick, tick sound. And because that sound, every single time you touch the screen and you try to open an app, or you touch something like going to a website link or whatever, it will make a tick before it loads. And that tick tells you that it knows you've made that input. So I think I can, there we go. So here, I'll try to let you listen to it. So right when you press something, it ticks. And that just makes it feel a lot faster. I've used this phone for about a month without the tick, and it felt slow. But then I used the phone for about a month with the tick, and I was like, wow, my phone feels a lot faster. So I highly recommend turning on the tick. Now, overall, this phone has been very pleasant to use. I've used it for about 4 months, and I would probably continue using it if I wasn't such a tech nerd. So if I was just going about my life without thinking of the newest tech and everything that was sufficient in a smartphone, for me, this is it. So the dual SIM, great battery life, the great display, the speed is enough. It's enough to play any game out there. The cameras are great. It's enough. So this is probably one of the best phones for me. And at $500, I can break 3 of them before I feel like I spent money on a, Note 20 Ultra. So I really think that smartphones have plateaued a little bit, and it's hard to make phones exponentially better. And this phone is good enough. Another thing I like about it is the edges. So the edges, unlike a lot of the flagships out there, are not curved. So there's a tiny little bezel, but you would virtually, you wouldn't be able to realize that it's even there. But the good thing about that tiny little bezel is if you kind of have like fat hands like me, and you do this, and some of your hand goes over the screen, that part right there would register on the S20. And if that's registering, I can't scroll if that's registering, right? But on this phone, as you see, it doesn't register. So no matter how I hold it, it kind of just knows that, it doesn't have palm rejection, at least not as an option, because it's not supposed to have that issue. It doesn't have the curved screen. And that's a huge thing. Like, yes, maybe the waterfall infinity display, whatever it's called, is a nice feature, but they don't have the palm rejection down enough that it won't reject that. And if I take out my S20 Plus real quick, you'll see that the screen does go over the edges a little bit. And because of that, if I have my palm on the screen like this, a lot of times it doesn't want to register. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but I realize that a lot of times it doesn't like to register. So that's another good thing about this phone. Now, like I said, I used this for 4 months, but I'm switching. I'm switching back to the S20 Plus. So for about the last couple of weeks, I've been using these 2 phones side by side. And I did a comparison on them, so I'm not going to go into that in this video, but I started using these side by side. So one day and one the other day. And the only reason I would want to switch to the S20 Plus, and this is the dual SIM International Exynos version, is because I want to experience just how fast the flagships can get. And the phone is faster. You can't compare the latest Snapdragon chip to a mid-range Snapdragon chip. But this one is fast enough that you won't really notice a difference. And the 120 Hz display on this, which is nice, but I never turn it on. So right now, this is at 60 Hz. It's on Quad HD, which means I can watch YouTube in 1440p, which is nice, but I don't have the 120 Hz turned on because of the battery life and because of the Exynos chip. If I keep the 120 Hz on for the S20 Plus, then the battery overheats. It kills the battery life by about 20 to 30%. And overall, the phone just doesn't feel as nice. So I turn off the 120 Hz display, turn on the Quad HD, and I've been using it like that. So overall, if you're considering this phone, whether you're coming from an A51, maybe an A20, A21, A50, this phone is substantially better. And if you're coming from the A70, which was last year's version, this phone is also substantially better. Like the benchmarks from the A70 compared to this one are noticeably different. So any phone, I would say below A71, and this is pretty much the flagship now. They're not making the ones higher than this. So any phone below this, I would get this phone. I would even get this phone in the likes of the Pixel 4a, the one that just came out. I would get this phone. It's bigger, it's thinner, it just feels nicer in the hands. You can make an argument for the OnePlus Nord. I haven't played around with that phone yet, I don't know, but overall, this phone is amazing. If you're coming from any other phone below this, get this phone if it's a decent price, and you can get some decent prices. I'll leave a link in the description below as to where you can get this. I got mine on Amazon here in Canada. I just checked, and in the US you can get it on Amazon as well, the dual SIM international version. It says it doesn't have warranty, but don't worry about that. I think it's fine. If anything goes wrong with it, just buy another one, right? It's only 500 bucks. So that's my review on this phone. If you enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing and giving a like to this video. I'm very, very curious as to what phone you guys are using. And if you're watching a video like this and you're not using, one of the boring flagship phones out there, I want to know, and I want to know how it compares to this phone. If you already have this phone and you have some complaints about it, let me know as well, because I'd like to compare my experiences with your experiences. Now, this phone has never heated up for me. It's never had any issues. So for me, this phone has been solid, except the speakers are kind of iffy. But other than that, the phone has been solid. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. So I'll see you in the next video.